Hi folks, this is Ron. In this video, I'm going to show you how to make a stub bend in a 1/2 inch piece of EMT conduit here using an ideal conduit bender. Now, when you look at the stub bends, which is probably the most common bend you'll find on a job site, it's really nothing more than a 90-degree bend in a piece of conduit. And contractors use it for all kinds of applications, like feeding electrical outlet boxes from conduit in the floor, but there's many purposes for it. And you'll notice on the heads of the benders that there's a graduated marks for 10-degree, 22.5, 30, 45, and 60-degree bends, depending on what you're trying to get accomplished here, okay? Now, when you make a stub bend, this shorter piece of the conduit typically is referred to as the stub, okay? And then the longer piece of the conduit typically is referred to as the tail, okay? Now, you'll find that all conduit benders may bend this thing slightly differently, especially between brands. And and that could be for various reasons. I mean, you might have damaged the conduit bender, you might have dropped it, bent the hook or something a little bit. Or, you come back from lunch and the guys are bending rebar at the darn thing, so may not be bending the way we want it to be bending. So most electrical contractors know when you grab a brand new bender, you might make a test bend, so to speak, and waste a piece of conduit and make sure that the stub up amount actually is 5 inches, for instance, on the particular bender you're dealing with. So, in this case, I'm going to use Ideal's catalog number 74-026, our ductile iron conduit bender, but you can also get them available in aluminum if you cared to. And the aluminum's a little lighter weight, and if you're bending 1/2 inch EMT all day, that's fine. But if occasionally you need to bend rigid pipe, you want to make sure you get hold of a ductile iron one. And cast iron is a fairly brittle metal, but ductile iron is a great product for this application because of its impact and fatigue resistance to it. And you'll notice that every bender head will have marked on it here. It says, in this case, it says stubs 5 inches to the arrow. Okay, so what's that mean? Well, on a 1/2 inch bender, that take-up amount, we call it, is typically 5 inches. But is it 5 1/4 or 5 1/8? If it's slightly off, we'll make a mark on the conduit bender, letting them know that next time I bend the conduit, it's the right length. And you should know that electricians don't bend a piece of conduit and then cut it to the right length. That they know how to use that darn bender. It is the right length and fit for this job we're going to do. Now, if you have a 3/4 inch bender head, it would be 6 inches typically, and a 1 inch bender head, 8 inches. So it'll vary depending on the size of the conduit you're dealing with. Now, say I want to make a 14-inch stub on this. Again, the bender here says 5 inches, the stub's 5 inches to the arrow, right? So I'm going to make a mark at 14 inches minus 5 inches, or 9 inches on my conduit here, okay? Now, to test to make sure that this is actually bending the way we want it to, I'm going to take a known piece of conduit here that is 48 inches long. And I've made a mark on it at 9 inches from one end, okay? That leaves 39 inches left over on this 48 inch of piece of conduit. Now, typically when you're making a mark on a conduit, you're going to use pencil, not pen, and that way you can actually erase it once you've installed it. I'm going to use a permanent marker here so you can actually see the darn thing, okay? And typically, electricians are taught to mark the conduit all the way around the conduit so that they can actually see it and the mark doesn't get lost in the bender head. Now, the next thing you're going to do is to line up that mark with the arrow. And it says 5 stub inches to the arrow. So I'm going to find the arrow mark, which is by the hook in the front of the bender head there, and very carefully line up that mark with that arrow on the bender head. Now, stubs are typically done on the ground, as I say, or on the floor. So we're going to take this piece of conduit, I'm applying a little pressure to the bender head so it doesn't move on me here. And then I'm going to step on the back end of the piece of conduit and kind of get my body weight low. Step on the heel of the back of the bender. And when you bend it, you want to bend it consistently, firm pressure, so you don't get any wrinkles or kinks in that bender or in that conduit run. Okay? Now, when do you know you're 90 degrees? Well, the answer to that is a little experience and some good eyeballs. And so we'll bend that to 90 degrees. And obviously, if we underbend it, we can bend it a little bit more. Or if you've overbent it, the handle has an opening on one end, so I can slide over top of that and actually tweak that, one way or another if I had to. Okay? So let's take a look and see how we did with that piece of conduit. All right? Well, I'm going to line that piece of conduit up here with my ruler. And when I do that, you're going to see that's right at 14 inches. So actually that bender head is pretty accurate at 5 inches, and I think you'll find that true with the Ideal benders. Now, if it was 5 1/4, you'd make a mark at 5 1/4 on the bender someplace to let you know that it's not quite the 5 inches, right? So then let's measure the tail, okay? Now when we measure the tail, you'll see that's right at 36 1/2 inches, okay? Now, what that means to me is this, we started, if you look at the two distances we just measured, we had 36 1/2, and we also had 14, okay? If you add those together, that comes up to 50 inches, 50 1/2, I should say, right? Now, we started with 48, okay? So that's what we call the gain amount. And the difference, obviously, is 2 1/2 inches, right? Well, that's useful to know for this particular bender head, because say I need to make a bend piece of conduit, and here's my fitting that I'm measuring from, and here's the wall, right? And this distance between the two is 22 inches, say. And we want to bend a 14-inch stub in the conduit. So as I said earlier, the electricians don't bend the conduit and cut it to length. What they know now is that we need a piece of conduit that's 22, which is that distance. We need it to be a stub that's 14, and we know the gain amount here is 2 1/2, okay? So if we add all that up, that ends up being 38 1/2 inches, okay? So now we know that we will cut a piece of conduit 38 1/2 inches long, and when we make that bend, it'll actually fit this application that we need it to fit for, okay? Now, this gain amount can also be referred to as the tail take-up amount, if you want to, or back-end take-up amount, which, again, is the same thing as this 48. So if you see, we had 39 inches to begin with. 39 inches minus your 36 1/2, which is actually what the tail was after we get done bending it, you still see that's going to equal 2 1/2 inches, okay? So you'll see that they're the same, okay? So we gained a little bit in the run, and we lost that amount in the tail end of that piece of conduit. So there you go, folks. Really pretty simple, and I think most folks with a little work can get that done, figure that out pretty quickly. And if you're an electrical contractor, bending stubs efficiently and quickly on a job site will make that job run all that smoother, and not to mention your value just went up on that job site too. Hey, so if you'd like to learn more about Ideal hand conduit benders, you can check them out at our website or contact our customer service department. Hey, thanks for watching, folks. I'll see you on the next one. I'm Ron with Ideal, and take care out there.